Okay, so picture this. It's the late 15th century. A brand new dynasty, the Tudors, has just clawed its way onto the English throne. But their grip on power is, let's say, shaky at best. And a ghost from the past is about to crawl out of the woodwork and threaten everything.
Now, this was the question that must have kept the new king, Henry VII, up at night. You have to remember, his own claim to the throne was, well, it was notoriously weak. So the idea that a true heir, a Yorkist prince, might still be out there somewhere, that wasn't just some campfire story. It was a direct threat to his crown, his family, and his life.
I mean, let's be real, Henry won the crown on the battlefield. That's it. His victory supposedly ended the Wars of the Roses, this brutal, decades-long civil war. But what it really did was show every powerful noble in the country that the crown was up for grabs if you were strong enough. These guys had their own private armies, and they were used to making or breaking kings. So for them, this new Tudor guy, he looked a lot like a usurper who could be, well, usurped.
And then, in 1491, it happens. The rumors start. Just whispers at first, coming from Ireland, of all places. They're talking about a young man with a famous face and an absolutely shocking claim. He says he's Richard, Duke of York, the younger of the two little princes who supposedly vanished in the Tower of London. And this guy, who we now call Perkin Warbeck, he had the whole package. He looked the part, he was charming, he acted like a prince. And his story of escaping the tower and living in exile, it was just plausible enough to make people wonder. But here's the thing, and this is crucial. A claimant with a good story is one thing. A claimant with powerful friends, that's a whole different ballgame. So how in the world does this one guy become the face of a massive international conspiracy? Because make no mistake, this was not some random dude trying his luck. This was a coordinated, well-funded, Yorkist-led attack on the entire Tudor regime. The answer to that is what makes this so fascinating, because it reveals this huge network of Henry VII's enemies, all these powerful people who were just waiting for an excuse, any excuse, to bring the Tudors down. I mean, just look at this list. This is a who's who of European power players. You've got Margaret of Burgundy, the sister of two Yorkist kings. For her, this was personal. It was revenge. You've got the King of Scotland, who sees a perfect chance to cause chaos for his southern neighbor. Each one of them looked at Warbeck and saw a perfect tool to mess with Henry VII. And by backing him, they made him a real, legitimate threat. And if this whole plot was a spider's web, Margaret of Burgundy was the spider sitting right in the middle. She was the sister of Kings Edward IV and Richard III. She absolutely despised Henry Tudor. From her court, she poured money and influence into this thing, basically acting as Warbeck's publicist and manager across Europe. She gave the whole affair a stamp of royal approval. But here's where it gets truly terrifying for Henry. The threat wasn't just outside the walls. The call was coming from inside the house. The conspiracy had snakes right inside his own court. In 1495, he had to execute some of his own top guys, including his Lord Chamberlain, for plotting with Warbeck. Can you imagine the paranoia? The king can't even trust the men serving him his wine. So, with powerful allies abroad and traitors working from within, this little ghost story was turning into an absolute nightmare for Henry VII. This was no longer a phantom menace. This was a five-alarm fire. And this wasn't just a one-and-done deal. Just look at this timeline. For almost 10 solid years, this was a rolling crisis. He pops up in Ireland, gets treated like royalty in France, tries to invade from the south, then gets the Scottish army to invade from the north. It was relentless pressure, year after year, all funded and armed by Henry's rivals. And then came the moment that was Henry's absolute worst fear. A Yorkist pretender, an external threat, linking up with a real popular uprising from inside his own kingdom. Thousands of people from Cornwall were already marching on London, furious about taxes. And get this, the taxes were to pay for a war against Scotland, a war that was happening because the Scottish king was backing Perkin Warbeck. So when Warbeck himself lands in Cornwall, it's like throwing a lit match into a puddle of gasoline. It was the perfect storm. But that final invasion in Cornwall, it just fizzles out. The whole thing collapses. His support melts away, and just like that, the game is up. Perkin Warbeck is captured, and he's dragged to the Tower of London, not as a returning prince, but as a royal prisoner. Before they executed him, the government published this, his official confession. And in it, he lays it all out. My name's not Richard, I'm not a prince, I'm the son of a boatman from Flanders, and the Yorkists used me. It was a complete and total denial of everything he'd been claiming for years. So, that's it, right? A neat, tidy ending. The bad guy admits he was lying the whole time. Well, not so fast. As historians, you gotta ask the big question. Can you really, truly trust a confession that comes from a guy locked in the Tower of London with his life hanging by a thread? So let's break this down. On one hand, the confession smells like pure Tudor propaganda. I mean, it's the perfect story to shut down the Yorkist cause for good. But, on the other hand, some of the details he gave about his hometown could actually be checked out. And it does help explain why so many of the really big English nobles never fully jumped on board his cause. So, the truth? It's probably somewhere in the messy middle. Part forced confession, part convenient truths, all packaged up to solve a very big problem for the king. So, when all the dust settles on this decade-long crisis, what are we supposed to take away from it? What does the whole bizarre story of Perkin Warbeck really tell us about this period? Well, it proves one thing for sure. The Wars of the Roses didn't just stop in 1485. This whole affair was like the overtime period. The war was still being fought, just with different weapons. Now it was a war of spies, propaganda, and international politics instead of just pitched battles on English soil. The Yorkist cause wasn't dead, it had just gone underground. And that's why this so-called fake prince was so incredibly dangerous. For almost 10 years, he was the focal point for every single person who wanted to see Henry VII fail. He was a living, breathing symbol of just how fragile the new Tudor dynasty really was. And that's really the question I want to leave you with. If he was just some boatman's son, a total fraud, why did it take a king nearly a decade with all the resources of a state to finally shut him down? The answer tells you everything you need to know about how unstable England was and how real the fear was that the Tudors were just a blip, a dynasty that might not last. The fact that this kid could command the world's attention for 10 years proves just how vulnerable that throne really was.